Is that the thing that they shove in Optimus Prime's chest or something? So we
Put it in my chest, Sam. I was like, oh, it's kind of weird.
stick it in my chest.
Stick it in my chest, Sam. Oh. I don't think that grunt was necessary, Optimus Prime.
The CG was so real.
Warning, the conversations in this podcast are performed by the cavemen. For your safety and the protection of those around you, please do not attempt to take anything you hear too seriously on the show.
All right.
Thank you.
Let's get started.
With the band, always on time. Never missing a show.
Gave you my heart.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to The Cave. It's The Cave Podcast. It's me, Joe Reezy, and I'm here with the cavemen. I got Proper, I got Kyle, I got ASM, and we got Don Brody back in the show tonight. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me, guys.
And before we begin, if you're watching live, make sure you check out the comments. We're going to post our Discord link if you want to join a community filled with crazy ass people like you and me 24/7. Then you can click that link in the comments. But if you're checking this out later, you can find that on our website. That's cave.com, k4v3.com. Don, been checking out your podcast.
Thanks.
You did the Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, which are my two favorite wrestlers, and the Montreal Screwjob, which I actually really got into because I watched Wrestling with Shadows, I believe, that documentary on YouTube. And it took me back because we always talk about how that part or that phase of wrestling, I feel like, was the prime and the peak of wrestling. I might be biased because we grew up around that time, but you also did a podcast about Aleister Crowley, and that was right up my alley, actually. So I'm like, gotta get you back on the show. So
cool. Well, I think it's so cool that you listen, man. You know, it's always like, you know, you guys are all hang out together, but sometimes like podcasting would be kind of an isolated deal, and you don't know what, you know, your listeners are out there and what they're thinking and stuff. So I always dig hearing from you, and I love sitting down. You guys are weird, and everyone who loves you is also weird, and that's just exactly my style.
Exactly. So I have to ask, is wrestling something that you were always interested in, or what drew you to the Montreal Screwjob?
Yeah, you know, saying that you're interested in wrestling is kind of like saying you can speak French, because you have to like be careful, because as soon as you say you speak, you know, somebody's gonna be like, oh, geez.
Especially around here. And you're like, we're gatekeepers around here.
Yeah, right, you guys, right? And so like I would be an idiot to be like, oh yes, tons. But I can say like hand over heart, like I am a lover of wrestling, and I'm a historian, and I often approach my hills from a sort of what's to love about this and what's the endearing side. And it was easy for me with wrestling because I grew up, I'm 45. So it was that 90s span, man, was like huge. And I'm also rural, you know, from like Hickville. So it was an especially, I remember saying it was like the time I got to see like the men in my life get like stoked about costumes and characters and like they totally seemed to get it, that you could just suspend your disbelief and that you could play in this like imaginative space, but also have it be kind of fucking more real than real, because it held these huge symbols and it's this ancient form. It's this thing we've sort of striven for, you know what I mean, forever. So I could like love it from all angles, but then specifically, man, the Raw and the WCW and like the Glow, the gorgeous ladies of wrestling, like that would all hit me at a very influential time.
You're from Minnesota, correct?
I went to college in Minnesota. I was born and raised in rural Wisconsin, and going to Minneapolis was the big city for me.
Right. I was going to say Minnesota is really big in wrestling too. There's a lot of wrestling legends that are from Minnesota.
We throw bales of hay and each other.
Wrestling is like masculine Circus de LA, you know? It's like there's something about it that just kind of, I think the physical phenomena just sells the story, no matter how kind of corny the story is, you know what I mean? You get really invested because of the physical feats that they do.
Yeah,
I
and
like
there's
that masculine
archetypes.
Cirque du Soleil. That's funny because you think about
Totally right.
Ultimate Warrior and like Don said, men getting excited for costumes, and you look at Ultimate Warrior and there was a meme. He's like, I'm dressed like a little girl's bike, and it was hilarious because he had like the little streamers on. It was like, yeah, he actually does look like a little girl's bike.
Damn, I never
This
put
is
that
ours,
together.
man.
Yeah.
Well, and there's also this whole idea about like the cultural importance of these sort of gladiatorial style things that we do, from like actual wrestling to the NFL to like MMA, and they're different. They're like obviously hugely different in a lot of ways, but they are us sort of demonstrating brute strength on each other because we're not literally state against state, city against city, battling it out for borders and fighting kind of old school style. And it's like a way to sort of tickle that need to just be like, okay, we all have a Walmart, but who could kick whose ass? Who could kick whose ass? That's what we want to know.
Right.
Yeah, it does transcend the wrestling sphere, because you do get the guest appearances too, where the political figures are all of a sudden in WrestleMania, or the athletes are all of a sudden coming out at the end of the match with a chair.
I love it.
But interestingly enough, I was drawn to the superhero kind of aspect about it, the good versus bad. But the Montreal Screwjob was an interesting time in wrestling, because that was kind of the precedence for the Attitude Era. And Bret Hart really, I feel like, stayed true to his character. And I mean, Shawn Michaels kind of had a 180 finding Jesus at the end of it, but I felt like he also was the forerunner for that kind of showman, bending over backwards to do whatever to get the crowd, invested in. Because some of the stuff he did before the screw job, like, I don't know if you got into the British Bulldog stuff, and yeah, that was crazy. And like looking back on it, hindsight, it's like, I mean,
there's like this weird legitimacy. It's so poetic. I think that's one of the things that makes like the Montreal Screwjob such a great story to like epitomize the beauty of wrestling, because it's got legacy family stuff, with Bret's dad having been such a thing. And then his father literally sold him. Like, he went with the deal to McMahon to like buy the name and the whole wrestling franchise that he had. And then to like be so devoted, like giving up money to just stay true to like the Federation, what he was in. And then, I mean, it just has everything, and a classic fall and heroes and villains and Canada versus the US. Oh,
Yes.
It's just gorgeous. It's gorgeous.
Poetic till the end too, the way it ended with the sharpshooter hold.
Man.
And he trashes the place.
Yeah.
And he trashes the place. And then he knocks his boss out.
That's what I was gonna say. I feel like Vince McMahon's a piece of shit. And there's a conspiracy theory I saw that said the McMahons we see on TV aren't even really the real McMahons. Those are just actors. But I know it is just interesting to bring up. But as much of a piece of shit Vince McMahon was, like, to be a man and be like, all right, just take one free shot to the face. It doesn't really make up for anything, but it seemed like it took a lot of steam off of Bret, and it was enough to cool him off,
Yeah. And sometimes you got to get hit because you should get hit.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that really tickled my fancy because I'm a wrestling fan, and we do a virtual wrestling show where we bring in, it's like a celebrity deathmatch show. So
we had Kendrick Lamar and Drake on the last one.
It was hilarious.
Great.
We said settle your beef in ambulance match.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, so fun. Yeah. And I've watched like slams, like gotten friends together for slams. And so we have one guy who knows more than everybody. He kind of coaches us through and who's who and what's what. It's fun.
Hey, who won that last match?
Kendrick Lamar won, man.
As he should. So the algorithm in which y'all put this ambulance match on was, in my not so humble opinion, correct.
It was up to their hands, man. We just did the commentating.
There you go. That was it. The better man won. Yeah,
the last Royal Rumble we had Donald Trump, Spider-Man, Jeffrey Epstein.
Epstein was in there.
And who won? Kanye West won that match. It's crazy.
Wow.
Crazy Royal Rumble.
Oh my God. How much fun to watch. That's a lot of fun.
That was for the presidency, actually, but
Soon enough.
So I don't think we asked about like who your favorite comedians were on the last show, but yeah, let's get to know your comedic palette.
Top 5.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
All right. I can, it's part of it's tough because I know some of these idiots,
Yeah.
You're talking to your peers.
Yeah.
Talking about your peers.
But totally. I would say that my favorite is Dave Chappelle. It's hard. It's the most rewatched. I get the most anticipated. I think he's great. He is not, full disclosure, he's not a pal of mine, but I like him. Jim Jeffries is also fantastic in terms of I like that personal point of view, storytelling, kind of comedy. Bill Burr is, I think, one of the most, I don't know if this is the right word, but he's one of the most, this is going to remind me of the word, elegant. He's one of the most elegant comedians I've ever seen. And part of the reason I say that is because I had the privilege of performing with him one night and introducing him at a comedy club here in LA. And he was nice. He was totally nice, but it was a small club. It's called Flappers. It's in Burbank. It's like, kind of off the beaten path, right? And he was there doing an hour. And I get your intro. What do you want me to say, or what don't you want me to say as you come on stage? And he was so focused on what he was going to do that night. Like he was not, chumming with people or drinking or partying. He wasn't rude to anybody. He was in his notebook. You know what I mean? He was like clearly making sure that he did his best shit that night for this Flappers, whatever night it was, right? Mm-hmm. And I watched this set. It was so good. It was so funny, but it was also had some really personal, deeply personal moments about like losing Bob Saget, who was a close friend of his. Mm-hmm. And it was just elegant to see him go from like real comic backstage, getting ready to do his job, to the dude on stage doing his job, mm-hmm. to the vulnerability and writing it takes to make that like really sad and hilarious thing happen all at the same time. I was just like, oh no, I'm just like such a huge fan of Burr. Now I have to try not to be an ass when he's done and be like, it was really nice, but so that was cool. And then there's some lifers that I love, like Carol Leifer is a comedian that has been doing it from the 70s. She's just phenomenal. She writes for Hacks and Curb Your Enthusiasm. She's the gal that like Elaine was based on in Seinfeld. She was like the Elaine, and she's just been, fucking kicking it and like telling jokes in front of live audiences for 40 years, man. And you don't know her name. Most people don't. It's just like so fucking authentically awesome and hilarious. Yeah, does that color in a spectrum? Does that give you an idea?
Yeah. And I think we were actually discussing before we even had you on. We were like, let's ask her about her favorite comedians, and there's a topic we talked about clones, and a popular one is Dave Chappelle a clone? Because there's a lot of theories out there floating around that this is not Dave Chappelle, this is a clone.
According to Jim Brewer, he also thinks that Dave Chappelle was
really. Here's my primary question when folks come up with clones, because clone science is not absurd to me. Mm-hmm. But when you make a clone of a person, it has to grow up from a baby. Like babies aren't. You don't get to. It's not unfortunately molding clones. They don't come out as you now. You got to put them in a lady, and it's got to grow up as a baby. So like, is there
unless you microwave the baby and a baby gets bigger? Is that a bad joke?
True. I hadn't really
the Hadron Collider, CERN, or something.
There's got to be a way to make that baby bigger. You guys make a really good point.
Well, you know what? It actually gets into the last show. You did mention one of your favorite topics to get into was Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Maybe like a Frankenstein type of, synthetic human suit, Because I did just watch Invasion of the Body Snatchers too, and we were talking about Cabbage Patch clones and Cabbage Patch theories in the last show. So It's been credible to me because I'm starting to see these crazy robotics getting uploaded with the new Chat GPT, system that they have that's like real-time voice reactive. So maybe uploading the talents or the consciousness into that. I don't know.
I don't know, man. Sometimes the thing that makes me wonder is like, I don't feel like I could properly upload a version of me at 14. Like just a subject with which I am already completely very familiar. I feel like I look at my own journals and I'm like, what the fuck is this? I think that a lot of what we have to presume with AI presumes a lot of us, which is like, we know what our consciousness is. We can codify it. We can never you mean the you that's talking to us right now? Or do you mean the you that goes to your job? Or do you mean the you that talks to your mom? Or do you mean the you when you're unconscious and sleeping? Like, also I think, I think that this is sort of I think it is a Frankenstein story in the sense that, we're creating this monster and that we don't know what's going to go wrong or what's going to happen when it wakes up, right? Like, I think it's a perfect example. But I also think it's sort of a Bible Genesis story in the sense that we have created a person in our image. We've created a living thing in our own image with all of our flaws and all of our fucking lusts and all of our, because some asshole has to tell this AI all the shit it knows, man.
Shit, you're right.
You're going to say, oh, don't worry. We've told the AI, what's important. And that is the people who pay us. That's the people who live here. That's what did you tell AI was important? That's
and
that's us.
A lot of our apps were actually agreeing to have them sample our voices, or anything in our camera. Because I just downloaded the new Chat GPT app and I had to really look before I clicked on the box that said, yeah, you could use my voice as a sample. I thought I'd give it my sample for my voice if it was just specific to me, but if it's for the whole system, then it's kind of sus. You know what I mean? So
totally. Well, and my voice makes me money. Like I am a voice actor.
Yeah.
So like it'd be a super bummer. It's but not just because I'd hate it, but there'd go a lot of work for me.
Are we gonna go in right now? Or are we just gonna go deep in the rabbit hole right now? Let's just do it.
Do it.
So it kind of ties in because you also did a deep dive in the rabbit hole of Aleister Crowley, and first of all, I want to ask you, he's a piece of shit, and everyone who's been on this show that we talked about collectively agree.
Yeah, he sucks.
But what do you think about some of his beliefs and some of the, theories and systems he was dabbling with? Do you think some of them are because he was on some Harry Potter shit? If you really talk, you know what I mean? Think about it. And it was interesting because I was listening to your show and the fact that he couldn't advance to the second tier of the Golden Dawn almost felt like Anakin Skywalker not being able to be on the Jedi Council, right? So I'm like, it seems like a lot of the movies and shows are archetypes of what happened to Aleister Crowley or around that circle almost, Yeah. But what do you think about his beliefs and all that stuff that you got into? The spiritual stuff.
I think that I think that some of the specific stuff is just knowing Latin. You know what I mean? Like in terms of, I guess, like straightforwardly, the divinity of it, the mysticism of it, I think is as real as the magic and mysticism that extends to my already known world. That is not unique to Aleister Crowley. That I don't think Aleister Crowley had any particular key to any particular book. I do think that like meditation is that fucking powerful, man. Like he was really good at yoga. He was like incredibly fucking good at yoga. He like almost just did yoga. And I think that if you've done yoga, you kind of get it. You find a little divinity in there, man. There is something about your body and connected to the ground. And it's why zealots make shit like that illegal, because it does have a little divinity in it. It does connect you to the infinite and makes you feel more than just a singular skin sack with its own mortality. You feel like something bigger than that, But I think you get that at a concert. I think you get that at church. I think you get that in a myriad of ways. And I do think that if focused and concentrated on, it can do insane shit, like make you climb mountains. You know, he climbed K2. He like was this incredible mountaineer too. And it's super attractive. I think we all agree that when somebody does honestly believe that they can talk to God, you're like, what do you mean? Come here for a second, you know?
Right.
And I think he was really rich. You know, he had a ton of fucking money, and that never hurt your ability to sort of go the distance, you know? So, you know, I think it was divine. I think he did touch something special that any idiot could touch if they wanted to.
The fact that he was rich, like you said, also opens up a bunch of doors because he can kind of just pay his way into these secret societies or these spiritual sites. Because didn't he do some kind of ritual inside of the pyramid as well?
Yeah, and like on his honeymoon.
Like how do you do that? Who gets to do that? You know?
Exactly.
Someone wanted to marry this guy.
Oh, lots of people. He had so many wives.
I mean, he was rich, so that helps, right? I mean, not only was he great, like you said, hot as a mountaineer, but the money helps.
Well, people are in a Jeffrey Dahmer, so I feel like that is attractive to some people.
But Jeffrey Dahmer doesn't look like Aleister Crowley. Aleister Crowley looks like Uncle Fester.
Yeah, he's kind of intense. He's really intense.
Taylor Swift didn't come out of thin air, all right?
No, she didn't. She came shooting out of that trapdoor from her stage. That's where she
Which was a pentagram.
Oh, yeah. Man. But yeah, I think Aleister Crowley, the fact that he had access to these holy sites, the fact that he had access to just like, why do you access holy sites and why do you access secret societies? Obviously, the ultimate goal is knowledge, right? So I feel like he was able to compile a bunch of research from like lead spiritual researchers from history. And I feel like from listening to especially putting in the do it thou wilt, you know, principle behind all this. If you watch Avatar, the last Airbender, it's almost like he's religion bending, you know, he's kind of bypassing rules that religion state to stay in the religion, you know, and he's doing whatever he wants with it. And it seems blasphemous, but he's kind of going all the way with it. You know, he kind of, I feel like, sees everything as a social experiment and he tries to tinker with it, almost like a prankster, you know, people that just kind of cause havoc and learn from it and observe from it.
It's a kind of prank, bro.
Literally.
Yeah.
No, but instead of it's a prank, it's like, it's for magic, bro, you know?
I think it's true. I think he also honestly needed to make money towards the end because he was a drug addict. And he was an egomaniac. And so he would spend all of his money and like bleed dry the resources of all of the people who had like given him their, you know, allegiance. Mm-hmm. And then he found, you know, becoming the monster very lucrative because he, you know, had of course bucked the religion of his parents and rejected his father's religion. And so because it was too restrictive, and then, you know, Thelema, it is do what thou wilt. That is the law. Is, you know, the basis of Thelema, the church that like he founded. Right. But it was very, you know, and of course it led literally to Scientology, but it always had at its roots that you must give me all of your money to receive my divinity. And so I can do it. I will too, you know.
Right.
And it certainly seems to have that thing, which is like, you can leave at any time. You know, which is sort of empowering. It feels like it's an empowering thing for a cult leader or like a person like Aleister Crowley to say, because it is true. Mm-hmm. You can leave. Why can't you just leave? But it is also so much more insidious than that. I think they kind of understand the power that they wield. And I don't know. I think he's just kind of a prick, but very interesting. I'll tell you what I think that my favorite thing about Aleister Crowley is his poetry. Some of his nasty poetry, I think, is actually really good. And that you can't deny how high the can climb a mountain. Like he climbed mountains with nothing, and then like nobody got as high as he did for like 100 years. Like that just takes a certain amount of fucking tenacity and breath. And even if you're a piece of shit asshole, I don't like you, and I don't believe in all of your hoo-ha, I can be like, holy shit, man. Wow, that's really hard to do. It's really impressive. You know,
it sounds like what Wim Hof is able to do because of breathing techniques, right? And if he's able to just kind of gather all this research, then that ancient breathing technique probably would have been something that he had in his tool belt. But now we're going to get crazier. I think, have you gotten into sex magic and all the rituals that he did with that?
I did. Yeah.
Okay, so the last show,
Abracadabra, your clothes are coming off.
Let me just catch you up with this. Are you familiar with the double slit theory?
Was this with the goat?
This is where you shoot particles of light into a slit, and once it passes the slit, it's just supposed to go in a straight line, right? But apparently there's an effect if you don't observe it, that it somehow acts as a wave pattern. So it doesn't shoot in a straight line. It acts like a wave. And so they put a camera in front of it to try to observe it. And when they put the camera on it, it just started acting like a straight beam instead of the wave pattern. But it's interesting. They took the camera and they placed it there, but they unplugged it. And it's almost like the particles knew that it was unplugged and it acted like a waveform. So people were trying to, pin that into the observer effect, that we kind of observe somehow in a quantum level, like these particles or thoughts or vibes or energy, right? But then we started taking apart all the sex magic parties, because it seems like the elites, the people with money, the people who are in these fraternities that have the, power to open doors for some people, always get into these orgies, right? And we laugh at it, but we're like, what if it's sex magic, And that's kind of what's keeping the creativity going, the good luck and all that going on. And Aleister Crowley also was one of those practitioners of sex magic. Jack Parsons was one of those practitioners of sex magic. And then you could also say everybody included in Scientology are, doing all that.
Yeah.
Okay, I was listening to all of that, but I couldn't get my mind off one thing, because when we said sex magic, Dawn said she brought up a goat. So what sex magic includes a goat?
What did you hear about?
Well,
That's interesting.
I mean, he had crazy.
Where does this
parties.
go fuck a goat came from?
Yeah, well, they're apparently in these ancient scrolls, right? Somewhere he discovered this sex magic that could be unleashed if the goat makes love to a woman. Makes love is penetrating a woman, right?
Whoa.
And at the point of the goat's climax, you slit its throat.
Interesting.
So that there's blood and semen and female, all the fluids are very vital. The particular mixing of these particular fluids at this particular moment. Wow. If you can get some of that fluid, then wow, I guess.
How do they know the goat's going to bust?
Thank you. Well, that's the issue. Literally, Aleister had this party. He got the goat. He got the willing women. Though these two items were not hard. But the trick is,
he experimented.
I mentioned this in my party. I was like, that's a lot of pressure on a goat. A goat, by the way, has to know that,
he had a control room. It's like, okay, so it's about 5 minutes. They average 5 minutes. So it's about to bust.
That's why they call him the goat.
The knife, like, really nearby.
Look at his face, the O face.
Sure, like pin the goat, penetrate the woman. I would imagine. I don't know this from experience. That sounds like a trick in of itself. But then the goat didn't climax. But Aleister slit the throat of the goat anyway, and everyone, put the blood on them. I mean, and then the other one that was kind of fascinating was involved. Okay, so this, if you want to talk about where like the conspiracy, a lot of these tendrils come from.
Yes.
I don't know if I did, but this history is a bit old. This research is a little beyond my grasp. But Aleister Crowley had one of these sex parties, and it was an orgy, of course. And the point of this particular orgy, this ritual, was to bring him, Aleister Crowley, to quote complete sexual exhaustion. Which was, and for this guy, I mean, you got to imagine, he's already been through decades of sexual exhaustion. So we're talking everywhere. Everyone's got to be doing everything, all the holes, all the things. Everyone's in, everyone's up, everyone's coming. It's got to be all the things. Right?
It sounds like a Diddy party.
No.
It sounds amazing. But then what we find out apparently is that one of these gals who was at this party is the grandmother of George H.W. or the Bushes, is married to George Bush.
Wow.
Senior,
Wow.
and is the wife of one president. So the idea was that Aleister Crowley's sex magic worked because at this orgy he put his seed into the presidency of the United. His But it was all a joke. I mean, we like researched this, people talk about this, and then some guy was like, oh my God, when the internet started in like 1999, I was like, I bet I could make these idiots believe anything. And he was like, Aleister Crowley had a sex party and George Bush Jr. And I'm like, oh my God, it's, 35 years later. And I just told 5 more people.
Yeah.
However many other people are listening.
I'm definitely going to spread that. around. That's new to me.
Yeah.
Spread the seeds.
No,
but I do think it's just, kink for the most part.
Yeah. Well, interestingly enough, the thing about magic, right, is it's all just like yoga. It's almost like mind over matter, right? And the interesting thing about the double slit theory, why I brought that up, is there's something about thinking about something that you're trying to will in for enough time to where you kind of just let it go and let the universe do its thing, And it seemed like these sex magic parties, because we're talking about post-nut clarity, and sometimes that seems like a form of just letting it go after
I think that's
orgasming your will into it, and just giving it to the universe. I was like, what if, post-nut clarity is making those waveforms, the light patterns go waveforms. Maybe somehow that's doing that. But
well, there's something that relates to actually Frankenstein with this, because I think I might talk about this with you guys last time, but the guy who invented the pacemaker, the scientist who invented the pacemaker, is a guy named Earl Bakken. And a pacemaker works by giving the heart a little jolt of electricity, right? Keep the fibrillation going. And he is like a garage inventor who came up with this idea because he saw Frankenstein the movie in the 1930s. And it made him ask the question about could electricity save someone's life? Could it bring the dead back to life?
Mm-hmm.
And through science and biology, he found out, no, it can't bring the dead to life, but the right amount of electricity introduced to the right organ at the right moment can snatch death back, kind of, from life, right? He's this incredible fucking guy. He founded Medtronic. After his retirement, he moves to Hawaii, okay? And he sets up some kind of experimental shit. The shit he couldn't do when he was a young man trying to be a professional, and that he couldn't do when he was the head of Medtronic, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of them was writing a peer-reviewed paper on the provable power of prayer, which I think is exactly your double slit theory, where he did double-blind studies, where he had healers from all religions and all backgrounds and all persuasions, literally sending healing energy to a patient that was also being monitored. And they could say to the healer, send it, now stop. Send it, now stop. Send it, now stop. And then they could measure, did it correlate to the patient? It's a real simple kind of visible thing that you can show other scientists and they go, oh yeah.
Yeah.
And he proved that it worked. And that it worked better when the people knew and loved and could see each other. But it also worked from around the world with people just closing their eyes and thinking about their loved ones. Sending good energy. That's a real fucking thing. That, to your point, can probably be measured and seen to some extent.
It's crazy.
The idea.
Right.
Oh,
I mean, it's just branded different things, right? It depends. Usually someone who's branding it is selling something behind it or starting a cult. There's all these mini micro cults everywhere. So I don't know. I just think it's magical. And we also we got into witchcraft and all these spiritual rituals. And we're talking about how some spiritual rituals kind of are normalized and you don't see them as spiritual rituals, just like making a baby. That's fucking magic if you really look at, but right now in the society, we're kind of numbed down with it. You know what I mean? Everyone's kind of just seen it as a normal thing. Some people don't even want to have babies, it's crazy. So
sure. Yeah. I mean, I find magic going grocery shopping though. So you're talking about
there's that too. Going on a run sometimes when you're pissed off is magic, So it's just a label. But the thing you mentioned about the goat and the semen thing, I think is also something about it goes into his do what thou wilt of religion bending, because I heard that, there's obviously black magic and there's white magic, right? And someone said that white magic is anything or any rituals that involve semen, and black magic's anything that involves blood sacrifices. And it gets into tantra, and this new semen retention and celibacy power or whatever. So I'm like thinking the goat thing might be kind of mixing to try to, offer to the gods and show kind of how powerful you are if you're thinking that kind of, dimension or that kind of imagery. So
Yeah.
Scary stuff.
Well, and it kind of touches on the four humors, which was, it's just the medicine of the medieval. It's just medieval medicine. The idea that all living things are divided into hot, cold, wet, dry. And you just got to kind of balance them out, which isn't terrible. We've done a lot worse, but that's still not great. But I think it's, and it is. You get a greenhouse, if you're trying to grow a living thing, those kinds of are the four things you have to think about. It's not that absurd as just a observing sort of botanist. I have a kid. I'm often cold, dry. Cold, dry. Is she eating? Is she pooping? Okay, then probably okay.
But what is the fascination with goats? Okay, so goats in every occult is it's always a symbol of a goat. So I never understood why do they like goats so much? The sex magic. We got a goat. I'm gonna slit his throat while he's thrusting in you or whatever. It's just what is this obsession with goats?
I don't know. I don't know specifically why they got such a bad rap. I'm sure it has something to do. I do not know this. This is not research talking, but I have a hunch. Something to do with the eyes. They do have really intense eyes, and
I'm afraid to stare in those eyes. I might get stuck.
They definitely do. My mom's got 5 goats, and their eyes are. I don't know. I guess I would compare it to reptilian eyes. They're cat eyes. Also, they just look. They look fucking weird, man. I about 45 minutes ago just got done feeding 5 goats, and now their eyes are fucking weird, dude. Mm-hmm. So I get where you're coming from, Don, on that. That is weird. And then we do know in like the Middle Eastern countries, there's a thing also with goats.
I just think if you're out there alone, which a lot of our shepherds and early scribes, folks who would write, and you're thinking big thoughts, and a goat fucking looks at you, you're like, Jesus. I mean, it's different than when a sheep is just a sheep. Black eyes. A dog is, we know dogs, but a goat makes you feel something. And this is one of those push me pull yous of human evolution, I imagine, which is are we spooked by goats because our mythology is so full of spooky goats, or are goats just spooky? Just fundamentally spooky to people? I don't know.
Well, our buddy Rico over at Talking Roosters is watching live, and he mentions too, you got Baphomet.
Yeah, I was going to mention.
So, to your question, proper, it's. Yeah, I mean that.
They call Jesus the Lamb too, which is also a sub. I feel of
it's a
species. Because I heard that goats were a subspecies of bulls, but they kind of have a serpentine nature to them. Because you guys were talking about lizards and cats, and we were talking about how cats almost have their eyes look like lizards more than the big cat relatives. So
I don't think big cats. I correct me if I'm wrong, but leopards, lions, cheetahs, they don't have vertical. Only I don't want to say normal cats. What the fuck's a normal cat, right? But your domesticated cats, maybe your savannas, your Bengals, the smaller breeds of cats. And even savannas savannas are fucking huge. I don't know if you ever seen one. They sit about 3 feet tall. They're big, dude. They're kind of terrifying, but they do not have the slitted eyes.
Right.
But goats do have a similar eye structure, and there is something, I don't know. There's something to it. I don't know what it is.
Just an interesting observation. All the hieroglyphic depictings of cat worship aren't lions or tigers. They're the house cats, kind of.
Yep. Yep. Sphinxes.
They said the reptilians are shapeshifters, so we felt serpents. Serpentine. I feel it's just kind of a vague, because there's dragons, there's lizards, there's dinosaurs. You don't really. anyways, we went deep into that one, but it does get into this magic stuff. I feel like we have some friends that are going into the Bach saga. Have you heard of the Bach saga, Don?
No.
Okay, because I'm glad I get to be the one to introduce it to you, because it's right up your alley as far as history you'd like to fuck.
It's new to me too.
A box saga? What is this?
BOCK. So apparently there's a sect of Atlanteans that left and traveled to Finland and ended up passing down their knowledge over there. But the history is only passed down verbally. So there's only a few group of people that know it. And to take the knowledge, you have to listen to the whole story nonstop without asking any questions. And if you ask a question, then you interrupt the passage of knowledge, right? But anyways, it's a creation story about like this utopia. And if you follow these spiritual practices, then you'll, preserve this utopia. But I guess the basis of it is this guy like ended up being able to do some kind of yoga to suck his own dick, and him,
like Marilyn Manson.
Yeah, him drinking the semen gave him the knowledge, and he was talking about how semen has this kind of spiritual power in it. So there's these yoga practices about like sucking your own dick to drink the semen. There's these practices.
Well, I guess
this is going out of
raise
YouTube
your hand
already.
if you have sucked dick and drank semen. I guess we can just take a poll here, because if it's about sampling,
yeah, you would know.
I can
you
tell
would know
you
more than any of us.
Mostly just the garbage jizz that y'all throw away in dirty tissues.
You're not getting any knowledge.
I can't. I mean,
Thank you for
had some spectacular. I've had some spectacular encounters, and I'm not even like yucking anybody's yum. And as you've heard, I'm willing to accept all kinds of weird divinity, but that is one that I would be like, I don't know. I feel like if you can suck your own dick, I feel like if you figured out a way to suck your own dick, you can just end there. You don't have to tell people that it's great. You don't have to tell people that like you figured out something awesome. I suspect people are like, yeah, we know.
Honestly, if a friend came into a group and it's like, hey guys, so last night I sucked my own dick, I was like, yeah, I'm not talking to this.
Good for you, man. And I don't need to follow up. I don't have any follow up questions.
My ride is here.
And certainly you don't need to like wait. And if you are going to keep talking about it, you probably don't need to tell me how the semen itself was the best part. Like, who are you?
Yeah, what the fuck? Like,
come on. I don't know, but
come on, man. I was eating here.
It's wild. But like they say that they had the original language, that they made the original language, and a lot of these practices. Well, it just kind of ties in, because I was thinking about like where do these sex rituals probably come from, and I feel like this is the origin of them, but kind of perverted in a way, like it might have been more of a metaphorical, biblical, spiritual metaphor that they took literal and started just sucking each other's dicks. And just kind of building a cult like Aleister Crowley, you know what I mean?
Yeah, Aleister Crowley probably sucked dick. I don't know.
He's an interesting one, Don. You should check out.
I think it is. I think it is very interesting. I also think that it's a little bit like, it's also a zoo documentary in the sense that there are, dolphins and bonobos are like one of the few other species on planet Earth that has sex for pleasure, that seek out the like calming effects of sex and transcend boundaries of like male, female, old, young. They get each other amped up with sex. They calm each other down. It's, you know what I mean? Yeah. And dolphins, you know what I mean, do something similar. And I think that it is kind of lovely that we as humans, I think one of our best and worst attributes is that we just love meaning, and we love ascribing poetry and levels of understanding and divinity to our every act, especially our reproductive acts, because it's like super scary and humbling to think that we're just fucking because we gotta make more people, and that it's like really important to like there's that like if you do the inner species, like the inner voice, it's like, yeah, girl, it's your DNA's demand to make more of itself. And like it's a powerful thing, man. It's one of the most powerful things in the universe. But is it a personified individual or a personified groups of individual with a singular focus and like a bureaucracy? I don't know. I doubt that, because as a historian, I've seen certainly not all of them, but the bureaucracies that humans have made are pretty lame. and they don't actually last that long. And we all the ones that are super mega global and eternal are made up. The evidentiary record shows that we tend to just fuck each other over and bail eventually. Sometimes it takes a few thousand years, but eventually we fuck each other over and bail. And so even if there is a sort of like present organization that seems super powerful and actually does control like a ton of shit, there's a tick-tock on these idiots bailing and or fucking each other over. It's inevitable. It is eternal. And their power is an illusion.
Prove your loyalty to me by sucking my dick.
Till
exhaustion.
Good. Tail is old.
I know. Don't invite me to your cult party. I will ruin a totally good cult party. Everyone's going to be like, "Oh my god, we just kind of want to like get the same bowl haircut and wear these Nikes." Dawn is such a.
I don't want to drink the Kool-Aid you mixed with semen. No,
That was a pretty great
This is not good for you.
Hey, this isn't a fucking Diddy party, bro. Yeah, nah.
No.
First of those.
I think back then they were just really bored, man. Come on. I mean, like, hey, what do you want to do? I don't know. I kind of did everything. Want to suck a dick? Okay, let's see what that does.
Everything.
We haven't tried that yet.
Also,
It's just a weird time. Imagine the weird pressure you are as a guy, and you see all your friends like, oh, we're sucking each other's dicks, and you're just like, I don't want to do that. No, man. And everyone's like, oh, all the cool guys are doing it. No, we're sucking each other's dicks. It's like, no, I am not. You could ask any guy in here, well, at least straight guys, hey, you want to get to the Holy Land, you got to suck a dick. I'm sure back then that would work, but nowadays people are like,
who's
I'm
in
not
hell?
doing that.
Who's in hell again?
I'm a skeptic.
Hey, did you say yes? Okay, no, we're all going to hell. I'm not saying that. It's a weird time. Like, you look at it, like Jerezy brings them up, and it's always like, why is it always an ongoing thing? It's like they were sucking each other's dicks.
Well, it also, like, the thing about, they just saw it as a holy thing, all right? And they said that
holy shit.
From a society that's been indoctrinated by a Catholic or a Christian perspective, they're going to see it as perverted and they're not going to get it, right?
Oh,
that's kind of the pretense for it, which also might be the perfect psyop pretense to kind of, sell the information a little more. So I am kind of seeing that side of it. But they said that the society, once you kind of bastardize these sexual rituals, these sexual practices, then you start to see the side effects in society. So they're saying that maybe society is the way it is because they've bastardized and they've strayed from the natural practices, right? But the thing about, if it works or if it doesn't work with the Diddy parties, because I said, why is everyone in society like having these orgies? Maybe obviously the people on top, they're obviously trying to find more knowledge as well. So maybe the knowledge that they're getting is the same knowledge that Aleister Crowley is getting. And it's all just these crazy, like, perverted sexual rituals or some breathing techniques or some, transcendental meditation is huge in Hollywood too. And everyone says that's the key for their success. Mm-hmm. But if it doesn't work, then it's blackmail. You know what I mean? Like, you suck my dick, bro.
Can you imagine if we were to wake up tomorrow and they're like, hey, we're going back to the old times and how we're just suck a dick. I'm like, no way, dude. I am not doing that. Because imagine you're doing it and then you believe like, all right, something magical is going to happen. And at the end of it, you're just like, bro, I just sucked a dick and nothing happened.
I think the idea, though, is the fact that it's powerful enough to create life. So like
not through your mouth. You create life by doing it, I guess.
So another funny thing, and I'll end with this one. It also, brings in all the dick jokes and stuff, and that's why there's so many dick jokes because it's.
We should have a suck dick counter on this podcast.
All the holy parts, because your body is a temple. Your body's a wonderland.
But you're swallowing some man.
So
interesting stuff.
Oh my goodness.
What I've been on.
As we're getting into this, like, do you think that there might be like some ties to if we're going into the dick jokes and all that shit, like from the Roman Empire? Like, do you think the Roman Empire just fucking died, or do you think that it's possible that they kind of like crept over and like, because that's exactly, as you said, like that's exactly kind of what happened. Like we have all this funny stuff happening, and then all of a sudden there's a collapse. But was it a collapse, or is it popping back up again? Is it like being revived? Because look at where we're at right now.
So
like,
that's interesting because I'm going to bring it back to Aleister Crowley and Thelema, right?
I wouldn't suck a dick to save the world if you asked me to do it. So no.
Bro, hey, Don, would you agree? Don, would you agree? There's Thelemites right now sucking each other's dick to talk to Choronzon.
You know, that's a complicated issue. All historians agree. I am a firm believer in choice on all fronts.
Yeah.
I mean,
if that's what you want to do, man. If everybody's into it, go for it.
Yeah, go ahead. Just not me.
Better. Yeah.
I think there's some down Thelemites.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. My thing is, it's like the Hydra thing. You know what I mean? I feel like Aleister Crowley was a figure, but just like Jeffrey Dahmer, there's a lot of copycats and people that get inspired by those fucked up stories that want to do their own stuff and have these micro cults, you know? So it's almost like Hydra, where when you take off one head, there's already 5 other heads that you got to deal with because they're also starting their own chains of it too. And there's obviously vulnerable people over there to use. That's why we get these Charles Mansons and these, who knows if Diddy's doing sex magic, like Diddy and you know what I mean? All them. So it's hard. Like, did they stop at the Roman Empire? I don't know if it was the Roman Empire, but I feel like the people inspired by these fucking crazy ass work are out there, and I think they're multiplying still. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I think that, I mean, when you talk about Rome, I mean, Rome did take itself across the known world and replicated itself like a virus. You know what I mean? Like, that's why you have the Byzantine Empire. That's why you have, like, during the Crusades, you had the Eastern and the Western. Christianity had to come together because they had been fighting about who was Pope because the Roman Empire was so far flung as Turkey, as Russia, from the Mediterranean. That was all Rome. And as the like, you know, happened again in the 1700s, all these colonized places claim their independence.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Reject Rome and claim their independence. But of course, the imprint of Rome is on them. It's on their architecture. It's in their language. It's like how the United States declared independence from England, and we speak English, and we wear them dumb fucking wigs, and we exchanged in Parliament, and we still replicated a very English model.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, like, what was Rome was everything Rome touched for about 1,000 years. You know what I mean? It's why Cleopatra is she's Roman.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Right.
She was one of the colonizing Romans that took, it's why Alexandria was the capital of, you know, Egypt. So when you ask what happened to Rome, it's like it's like you talked about with the downloading your consciousness. The host died, but the consciousness of Rome is alive today, you know?
Yeah, man. It's deep. It's deep, but
all right, guys.
No, that was good.
We needed a historian to tell us that, you know.
Yeah, we needed to shy away from the dick jokes real quick and get a little serious.
I learned way too much in the past.
You know what? I found out about all that stuff playing Assassin's Creed. So that's crazy that they kind of play.
There's dick sucking in Assassin's Creed.
Love that game. Love that game.
Hey, which Assassin's Creed was that?
Origins had the.
Oh, okay. Orgies. Okay.
Hey, man, origin. That's probably where it starts.
Orgies.
Yeah. Hey.
You guys can imagine how much fun it is for me to get like cornered by the uncle at the party who, you know, like watches a lot of the History Channel and is like, Dawn, let me tell you. I'm always like, oh boy.
Unsolicited.
Uncle, you might want to sit down and grab a drink because I'm about to fucking drop a mic or two on you. No, I got it. Here's a chair. Sit down. Trust me.
Let me tell you about the history of sucking dick.
I have a podcast for you. You're gonna love these guys.
I got a PhD.
Oh man, that's not even. I said one ritual. That's not even half the ritual.
Too easy.
PhD, yeah. I mean, pretty huge dick.
There you go.
That might be the origin of it, but they just made up a sub.
Great Kanye line.
You know, keep it in the family, keep it in the society thing. But
we need a dick counter on this episode. Ding, 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 ding,
just like the Roman Empire thing that Don was talking about. It's like, God, you guys threw me off. secret societies are I feel like evidence of that. Like no matter how much you regulate and you say people can't practice their spiritual practices or their theologies, they're gonna do it. They're gonna do it in secret societies, and I don't know. That might even be better for them, so they can kind of work from within and gain intel from outside. So it's crazy stuff. Been going on for a while too.
Yeah, I wouldn't be so sure that that it's going to end. And I think this also kind of goes into, and Don, you would know, like, does history in fact repeat itself? Because yeah, just so like my brain, my little brain, like it's hard to take in. Like there's so much information depending on exactly what we're talking about. But like, I feel like history in a way is kind of repeating itself in the sole fact when I go again, I talked about Rome briefly, went back to Rome, and like the times that we're in, we have like extreme inflation. And it's just really weird. It's just really weird how everything is like panning out right now. And I don't know enough about history to be able to actually like stand on this. But I mean, I guess what do you do you think that it's possible for history to not repeat itself consistently? I would love to believe that us as humanity, like we have these different events in our lifetimes, not even just but our ancestors and what have you. And hopefully we're learning and we're fixing mistakes. We're falling forward, right? So we are falling, but we are making some corrections to the way that we live. Like, do you think it's a possibility?
Yeah, I mean, it is. And first of all, I want to say, don't diminish yourself and say you got a tiny brain. All right. We're all members of history. We're all living through. I'm telling you, historians like me get PhDs reading the journals and the letters of people, real people who are living in real time. And we find the record of that people leave behind as so treasured. And one of the things that's happened to me as a historian is because I know the value of finding like one diary from one of the victims of the Donner Party, right? And it's like, nobody sits and is like, oh, but he wasn't very smart. He wasn't well read. And he didn't know Shakespeare. It's like, we just know how much information we get from one person's perspective. And you are that person, you are living history. So I'll start with that. Second, history absolutely repeats itself, but it only repeats itself in ways that I know will be really familiar to you, in the sense that the most reoccurring pattern in the universe is a spiral, right? From seashells to hurricanes to DNA strands to galaxies to thumbprints. I could go on and on. It is the most reoccurring.
Fibonacci.
Yeah, the most reoccurring, one of the most beautiful patterns in the universe. And if you look at it, it is a circle, right? But it is a circle that never, of course, goes right back on its old groove. That's a circle. And that is not the most reoccurring pattern in the universe. It's the one where it comes back around again, but it's a little bit outside or it's a little bit inside where it was before. Which means in the terms of physics, those two lines are never going to cross. They're totally different. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But we see them as a pattern because they are going around each other. And if I need more help sort of understanding how history moves like that, I look at my life. Is my life my mother's life? Wow. No. In a lot of ways. But there is in the sense that I was a child and then I was a young woman. I lived a professional life and I also live a life as a mom. And I'm going to die someday. So that's hard so what are you talking about? Did it repeat itself? To something that you might be speaking to more specifically, which is just sort of opening your eyes and the age of information, where we have the capacity, or at least we think we have the capacity, to know what's going on all over the world all at once. And to have the history log to have known what's happened before. There are, for example, events like the lead up to World War II that included things like terrible inflation and a million factors, a lot of factors, which I'm actually very excited because my next episode is all about that. Nice. But a lot of people are feeling that right now. They're looking around and they're like, I'm so sorry. Aren't we kind of on like super familiar territory, which is the territory that leads to a world war? And yeah, but and we always are. I mean, this is why the cults and these phony divinity things get so much traction, is because their truth is unchallenged.
Mm-hmm.
In the sense that, like, of course it is born, it lives, and it dies. And you recognize the pattern of being born and living and dying. Or, you know, there's going to be a hurricane, and then there's going to be a bad man who rises to power, and then there's going to be a bunch of disease. Ooh, fucking wow. Good for you, man. Who could have ever have picked, and I'm not kidding, a 7-year span of time where that hasn't been true in the course of human documented history. And we say it's picking up, but that's only because a lot of it is our age of information is picking up. Like, I saw a comet, that comet on TikTok. Oh my fucking God, comets are spooky. And they happen all the fucking time. You know what I mean? That is also not to say, sorry to go on and on, that I don't think that, you know, a biblical apocalypse is possible. And our sun has a ticking clock. Our sun will go out one day. There's all sorts of weird mutant shit that is real and happens in nature. So, you know, yes, it is magic. It is predictable. It is divine, and it is natural and within the scope of everyone's understanding.
Interestingly enough, like it going back to Aleister Crowley and you saying that eventually he needed money, you know, he ended up becoming a scam artist. Like a lot of these psychics are. And like you said, like if you look at it, not all psychics can read these patterns that are going on and observe and predict things, you know what I mean? But if you sell yourself as this mystic, you know.
Well, can I tell you what? I'm an actress and a comedian, and one of my old jobs was I used to pretend to be a psychic at parties. And
oh wow!
and it was really fun. And one of the things I learned right away, and I'm not psychic. I'm claiming.
I'm just kidding.
But it would be, I would put on a Romanian accent, or what I said was a Romanian accent, because I feel like most people don't know what that is. And I had the big hair and lots of eye makeup and jewelry and the tattoos and things. And people would wait in line, you know, and people who took it seriously took me seriously. I felt their faith in me, as even though they're laughing and they're holding wine and they're like, "Shut up, Tammy." When you hold their hand, when you just look into someone's eyes, and you touch the palm of their hand, and you look at them, and you really start to think about them, it's something divine and miraculous happens. And I would say things like, I'd be doing it in a silly accent, but I'd say, "Your hands, you know, this or that," and you'd see them, you know, and I was like, well, yeah, because we're two human beings in a room, man. And I'm taking a hot minute to just really be with you and look in your eyes. And that's
right.
Crazy. That's nuts, especially now, maybe, because we're also, you know.
Yeah, I was about to
we
say.
wear masks. I don't want to point fingers. I don't want to point fingers at anybody in particular, but, you know.
Yeah.
We'd rather not, because it's really, you really can be touched when people do that, you know?
It's almost awkward to people now when, you know, you bump into each other and you get physical touch, right? And I feel like it's almost like an overwhelming sense of download from the other person, but you're, you know, taking it as anxiety and you bitch out of that, you know, moment of transaction instead of, you know, like sitting there and actually having that spiritual or energetic conversation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So interesting. And also it's hard because before you even touch, like with social media and all these psyops going on, like you already have an idea about somebody just based on how they look, what they're wearing, you know, or what their Instagram profile is like, to the point where I don't even want to touch this person because it's, you know what I mean? Or what I think they are already. So
I will chime in. No, that's a solid point, man. And man and woman, both y'all, great fucking point. All right. All good. But what I will say, like, to touch on that too, just an experience that I had, like, a long time ago when I went to boot camp, right? So everyone is gathered and everyone looks how they normally look. You got long hair, you got short hair, you got spiky hair, whatever. And immediately you're kind of like, you're reading the room. When I say the room, you're reading the airport, right? Where everyone's gathered. We're about to hop on a bus. We're about to go to boot camp to training, whatever. And I'm looking, I'm like, yeah, you're fucking look like a weirdo, kind of, sort of. Like, you got the big baggy black pants with the chain that's going from like one belt loop all the way down, wrapping around to the back belt loop. You got really long hair and it's braided. I didn't see no dreadlocks, but anyhow, what I'm getting at is like, you're looking around and you're like, oh my God, dude, what the fuck did I sign up for? Like, what did I sign up for? And then like a day or two later, everyone gets their head shaved, like mine. Okay, everyone gets their head shaved, and we're all equals at this point. We all wear the same clothes. We all wear the same everything. We do the same shit at the same time. The only thing that sets us apart is our personality. And the friends that I have made, I don't even remember if you were that weird dude with the super long hair, with the black baggy Junko jeans pants with the chain. And so it is, there's definitely something powerful to that. And
to me, it's like the thing that made you stick out to me that I judge you on, if we end up becoming close, that's what I love about you the most. You know, it almost transmuted from something I judge you on into something that I love about you. That makes you stand out. So interesting point.
Yeah, it's just, and I mean that we don't got to go into the whole COVID bullshit, but I do think that also has a fucking point too, with the mask and the 6 feet apart. You know, like Don was talking about, like just even before you touch somebody's just hand and you're looking at them in the eyes, like that was fucking gone, dude, for like 2 to 3 years. That was gone. You couldn't even get close. That little energetic field that you have, that's like a 6 feet, I guess circumference, maybe the wrong word, but like you're everyone was out of each other's energetic field. So like, what I'm getting at, I think there's something to it. I think there's some power to it. Beautiful power. I'm not talking like magic, black. I'm just talking, there's something powerful, something that has substance, substance, however you want to fucking call it or look at it. But yeah, anyhow, that's my rant. Right on.
Beautiful. You said the spiral, right? And you said the Fibonacci sequence. If the Fibonacci sequence is a deformed spiral, if you will, right? In a sense, it's more of like a rectangular spiral. Would I be crazy to say that, you know, the serpent is always a symbol, and that serpent that's coiling and eating its tail is kind of like that pattern that you see almost, right?
Yeah, except not. I think that's one of the things that makes the serpent eating its tail a bastardization of the beauty of the spiral. Is if it becomes a circle, it is cannibalistic, incestuous poison. I see. And again, that's a biological fact. You know, you can't have the cats and the rats eat the cats and the rats and the cats eat the rats. They will deplete in nutrients and die. There has to be three. You have to have cats and rats and birds. You know what I mean? Or they won't live.
That's interesting.
And you can't. It's why you can't just harvest one crop in a field. You have to rotate it. This isn't, again, anybody cracking down on anyone. This is the system of life. This is what's been proven out again and again. There is a beauty in a trilogy, 3 legs of a stool. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
And a snake eating its own tail is not how that works. That's incestuous. That will close itself off. It will devour itself and it will die. You know, so if I was a historian seeing a snake eating its own tail in a vacuum, I would assume it was a warning, an ancient warning, not a symbol of a tribe or someone's like identification of themselves. I would think that was a symbol of don't go here, don't do this. This is a
trap, like a dead end almost, right? Interesting. Yeah. So one question that I have about your psychic story, and it's something that we talked about too in one of our segments, is acting is such a strange like practice, right? In a sense, you're embodying a spirit of something else in order to channel it and, you know, lay it out on screen. do you see it as that? Like, do you see it as a metaphysical kind of spiritual form of showmanship or showwomanship? You know?
Mm. Well, I guess I hate to be a broken record, but I think that in ideally for me, a good performance when it's working isn't going out of yourself and trying to reach to something that is away from you. It is looking inward. It is finding that part that is already inside of you and acknowledging that it's already inside of you. And that's to get to an authentic performance. And what becomes tricky then is like Jack Nicholson is a great actor because Jack Nicholson knows how to be himself. And that is really hard, you know, and he can be a caricature. He can turn parts of him up to be a scary clown and to be, you know, and he's super scary when he's scary Jack Nicholson, but he's still Jack Nicholson who has just sort of adjusted his levels, you know what I mean? From up and down versus somebody like a Gary Oldman, who is a chameleon actor who you don't realize. You start to like do the list of things and you're like, oh my God, that was fucking him in True Romance. Oh my fucking God, that was him in Batman. Oh my fucking God, that was him in Dracula. You're like, what the fuck? This guy, and I feel like to do that means that he has to an extent, the actor stuff, find the part of him that is Dracula. That is that guy. And then you'd find out how he dresses and how he moves. And some of that's really technical, but it's mystical in the sense that it's really inward. And then like all spirals, if you look in long enough, you'll come back out. You'll find yourself as part of the divine, you know, you'll see you as that. Am I the mother? Am I the daughter? Am I the wife? Am I the ex? Hell yeah, girl. You go on Instagram right now. I'm one of them to all sorts of cunts. You know what I mean?
So instead of almost channeling outside of yourself, you're almost more self-aware because you get to explore different palettes of yourself that people probably don't really get to channel because they're not faced with, you know, prompts to be able to bring that out of them.
I think so. I mean, it's sometimes like, you know, if you looked at a character, for example, that the movie is going to portray this person as a villain. And you read it on the page and you know, boy, this person is terrible. They just shot their own kid in the head and then burned the house down. Like, what the fuck? I got to look in. You know what I mean? I got to look in to find some of that. I don't know. And it's where really scary acting stuff can happen. Because of course you're not actually finding the way that you could kill your own kid. What you have to find is, how desperate am I to live? How desperate does this person have to be for me to do that? And and where people bail on either an authentic performance or would say, no, I don't want to do this part because I don't want to spend the amount of time it's going to take to figure out how desperate I'd have to be to do this, to find out where I would have to be emotionally and psychologically for this to happen, because it does happen. And I don't think anyone who does these horrible things has looked in themselves and been like, yep, that's me. I could do that. You know, so yeah, but it's, you know, it's why, you know, acting's really hard and also really sacred. Like you talked about COVID, right? We couldn't connect with each other, but we connected with the actors. We connected with stories. We connected with those people who were showing us such a facsimile of real life that it stirred our hearts and it made us cry and it made us believe in love, or it made us mad, or all the things that our art does. You know, our actors were doing that for us. And it was like really important, you know.
Yeah, it was for sure. People were going crazy around that time. So,
yeah. Oh yeah, I can fucking rant. I'm not going to rant, but I can rant. Yeah. Anyhow, that should just all of that just pisses. Not anything that you said on there, but
Yeah. Well, I feel like that too is important as far as like what the actors are portraying too, because I feel like when people are very hungry or very thirsty for some sort of entertainment, then they're very vulnerable to what they're taking in. And interestingly enough, and I'll get off the magic stuff because I'm the weird one. I'm the one that wears the mask. I'm the one that believes in like deep spiritual warfare. So I have a bunch of these research that I want to bring up and talk to you about. That's why I brought up the box saga. But interestingly enough, I feel like sigils is also something that Aleister Crowley, you know, believed in. And it's not just Aleister Crowley's research. Sigils is you could say everywhere, right? And whether you believe it in a spiritual sense or whether you believe it in a just subconsciously programming sense, it has some sort of effect, right? Grant Morrison, I think he is a comic book publisher, a comic book writer. He treats his comic books almost as hyper sigils because he writes in like life events that he wants to happen, and then somehow they happen, right? And going back to the semen stuff and the sex magic stuff, there is a theory that he had this experimental comic coming out that he was kind of nervous about. And so he had his followers, obviously cult leader, right? He had his followers do like this, like universal synchronized jack off session to sacrifice their semen in order for the sales to go up. And sales went up, and, Magic likes to play in the, coulda woulda space. So did it work? Did it not work? I don't know. But sigils, right? Just this form of pictures in your head that can really affect your belief system. And going back to, having this preconceived idea of somebody before even touching them, I do believe that it's all, like I said before, BS belief systems, right? Whatever your BS is in your head, that's what you're going to see. And that's what it is. So yeah, with actors, I feel like, and we talked about this in our last podcast, everything's kind of canceled now, and you kind of have to dumb things down in order to put out your work out there. But we talked about how, are there some whistleblowers in the film industry, that are putting out like these sacred knowledge out there? Because it seems like the mainstream production companies, you have to go through so many filters to where sometimes if you're not up to China's part level, like you're not even going to be broadcasted, because the Chinese market is really important to those production companies, right? But I was saying, like, YouTube is powerful too, because you have these independent filmmakers putting out their projects out there, but even that's watered down now. You can't really put out your ideas out there. So just as important, I feel like actors and movie productions are. I feel like if they're kind of filtered by the people that don't want their product out there, I don't know, I'm thinking some kind of nefarious thing, but I don't know where I was going with that, but I feel like there is magic and there's power in acting, whether it is spiritual or whether it is just kind of inciting some kind of energetic response from somebody. It's magic in a sense.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there was I'm not a proponent of any particular religion. I think there's truth in all the poetry of a lot of things. But like one of the things the Bible said is, I think, wherever two or more of you gather, there am I also. And I think that is a very reoccurring idea of, there's this little sizzle that happens.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really special. Humans are really special. Dogs have it. Other creatures kind of have it. But like, we got it big time. And we fuck with it. And it's crazy. And it gets nuts. But like, it's really special.
Right.
That's why solitary confinement is cruel and unusual, man.
Actually, I got back what I was saying. And it actually ties into the Montreal Screwjob, because that was the turn of the Attitude Era, right? And now, instead of the imagery of superheroes and bad versus good, it's hypersexual stuff, right? And it's like disrespecting the order, rising up, degenerate, suck it, and all that stuff. And now you're seeing all these hypersexual youth, And like we said again, like before, comedy is a special form because it gets to almost sneak into the entertainment and the mainstream media by like through comedy, but somehow kind of bring you conscious lenses to digest all this crazy shit that's going on. So I don't know. It feels like looking into the Attitude Era and looking into the Montreal Screwjob, did you think that there was some kind of nefarious like movement in mainstream media, or do you think it was just strictly just for viewership?
Yeah, I think that was totally money and power, man.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it was a screw job for sure. I think they did him dirty, And
Right.
I think that it was kind of like cruel and unfair. He was also fucking with a beautiful system. You drop the belt. I mean, I get it, but like, I am a tree hugging, like liberal, lay in the nature. And I'm like, wrestling is about hurting each other and drawing blood. You don't not drop, like, you either fight until you win the belt. You don't give him the belt in a ceremony the next day. That's not the gladiatorial ring. That's not what we're here for. Brett fucked it up. Like, he should have dropped the belt. You know what I mean? But he also got absolutely ramrodded, and they insulted him by using his move against him. I think it was all really, you know what I mean? Pretty straightforward. And I think it was a combination of like guerrilla chest pumping. We do it because we can. I'm the one who makes the rules, you don't. And if I need to fucking flip you to show you that I'm more powerful than you, then I will. And I think that's what he did. I think he was slapping the dog with a newspaper. I think it was not too much more complicated than that. You know, and Brett always knew that was the deal. He's my boss. He hired me. He can fire me. I know the power dynamic, and he kind of tried to challenge it, and it didn't go his way. I still think Ed McMahon sucks. Or Vince McMahon. Ed McMahon's fine, but he kind of sucked too, but not as bad.
Broman's gone wrong, pretty much.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, that. Sorry, real quick. So I just have to try. There's one thing that just came to my mind. You said something like that you were a liberal, like Trigger and diddy. And I say diddy because I didn't fucking remember exactly verbatim what you said after that. But I do think when it comes to this type of shit, like I think all of us, like everybody has a little bit of this and a little bit of that in them. Like I think a lot of people, like, you care about the planets, you care about the trees, you care about this, and I think we're all so fucking similar. And maybe this is like a no-brainer for some people, but for me, it just kind of popped up. But I think we're all so similar, but we just get so divided by like mainstream. Like we have so much in common. Like I do think that like the red and the blue and the green and the pink, like I feel like we have so much in common, but we're so fucking divided that it's like you can't be in the middle. It's like when you do those I forgot what you call them, little diagrams at school where you draw like 5
diagrams.
Yeah, a couple circles, and then you have everything in, which is funny if you think about it. Everything in the center's like this. It's tiny.
Yeah.
Outside, you got these big fucking huge circles. But like, I feel like we all have like more in common. And I say we, I'm not just talking about the 5 of us in this studio here. But just in general, I feel like we have so much in common, and it's all about like just coming together and just don't be a fucking asshole. Like before I believed in the Bible, like before I got into the Bible, and which is very recent for me. Shout out real quick to the Cave Bible Study. Just saying. Weekly, dude, and it's been. I'm thankful for it. I'll leave it there. I'm very thankful for it. But my whole thought process on that was always just like I can't verify the Bible. I can't verify God. I can't verify different religions. But in my head, and it still kind of stands in a sense where I'm just like, don't be a fucking asshole. Be kind, be nice, and do it. I'm pretty sure, depending on how you grew up, like we've all heard this. If you have nothing nice to say, shut your fucking mouth. I know some people are like, no, yeah. Some it's like
I'm so quiet.
That's a Kyle quote.
Yeah. Some people are like, just don't say anything at all. Yeah, it didn't roll like that in my house. So just shut your fucking mouth. Don't say anything. You're in a grocery store. You keep your hands out of your pockets and you don't touch shit. Why don't you touch it? Because you have no money and you can't buy anything on these shelves. You don't touch shit. But anyhow, I feel like it all kind of ties in. Like, just be kind, dude. Like, that's why I get so frustrated when like different random things pop up. It's like, I don't know how hard it is.
Please call me crazy if I'm making too many connections, but it goes back to Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels in movie stuff, right? Like, Bret did not want to depict like this degenerate form, and you could say that people growing up got affected by that, and that led to, like this new radical movement of people. And just like I feel like the media played into COVID stuff too, right? I feel like if the media didn't go so hard, I feel like the discrimination, whether you're vaxxed or not, wouldn't be so heavy. I feel like they really played into that. I feel like some people would have cared, but I feel like a lot of people care because the media almost kind of corralled them in order to take a side. And sometimes you've seen TV shows and there's comedians that kind of almost play into that, feed that egregore. You know, I talked about like this idea monster that you could build, like an egregore kind of thing. You're feeding into that idea. So that's what I'm trying to say. Like, I feel like there's power into bringing people together. And you see that when 9/11 happened, people were so united, right?
Mhm.
There's a lot of crazy shit going on right now that could totally unite people. But it feels like we talked about in our last podcast, it's more for profit than it is for peace and paradise. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that it's so iconic because, like we said, it goes back to our initial conversation. Wrestling is a metaphor for life. And I felt like the Bret Hart and the Shawn Michaels was a physical wrestling match of a spiritual bad versus good, you know? And this world and this stage, obviously, bad is always going to win because it's about physical. So I guess how I'm reframing that, how I want to ask you as a historian is, we talked about cycles and stuff, and we got into Aleister Crowley, and Aleister Crowley and the Golden Dawn go back to the Freemasons, you know, the Rosicrucians and the Templars almost. There seems to be this quest for God, right? Do you think it's just kind of innate that we're trying to see God, and the side effect of that is like war and and these empires? Or do you think that there really might be a spiritual warfare going on?
I don't know. I think they're sort of a growth of two separate things, if that makes any sense. I feel like our subconscious probably has a comprehension of a pre-life, like just the idea that there was a conception and then a birth and then a life and then a death. And I think that in our subconscious, because we're so aware of our own mortality,
Mm-hmm.
we don't know what death is, and we don't know what happens after we die, but we are unique among species to be really conscious of what death is, and that it's inevitable.
Right.
And once you become sort of aware of that, it becomes it's a mental fuck show of, why am I here? What am I doing? What is the point? And I think lots of people offer you points, but the point always comes back to, and you are just going to live until your skin sac dies. And that is either going to happen real fast all at once, or slowly over the course of, if you're lucky, 100 years. And that's a really difficult thing to actually to be like, okay. And for example, like, you know, in this case of Christianity, as my understanding is, you know, you do right, you go to heaven. There is an accepting Christ into your heart, a ritual, a ceremony of saying words and also believing something consciously that then gives you access to a perfect divinity that goes beyond your mortal life. That is such a beautiful thought. I think that's great. I kind of believe something similar in terms of just stardust in the universe. But then it doesn't answer the question of what's the fucking point. Because if you sit there and say, yes, I accept Jesus, and you believe it, you still have to pay your taxes and go to work, and you're going to stub your toe, and you're going to shit your pants, and you're going to change your mind, and you're going to wish you didn't. You're going to lust. You're going to go through all these things. And I think that people, even though we know that the whole point of like joining that cult or being in that religion or saying those words, or people similar, you get married. I think people get married because they think these magic words, that magic works differently. I'll stand in front of a judge and I'll look you in the eye and I'll say, yes, you and only you, I do. And that will somehow make my love different versus just the choices that I'm going to have to make every day, because I'm going to have to continue to love you every day and wake up with you every day. And like, that is a thing that's going to like keep going. And that true divinity in all these religions all over time, the closest thing that I've ever heard to like a truth is find thy beauty where thy can, not necessarily do what thou wilt, but find the spark in every moment. I mean, that
nice.
there may or may not be a point, but that's what your gift, that's what you've got,
Right.
you know, and whether or not there is a heaven or hell is a huge idea. It's a huge, big thing. It should occupy people's thoughts, but it won't change the things that you will be doing in your waking hours and your responsibilities. You know what I mean?
100%.
Yeah. Magical.
So, yeah.
Magical.
And you know, it's so funny. It's like the trilogy has come full circle because I'm totally turning into a mom, and I think I have to go because I have to go to make up with my daughter.
Aw.
No problem.
All
And,
right,
like,
no,
part
we
of
understand.
me, like the late night part of me wants to be like, what do you guys think about the lizard people that live under LA? But the other part of me knows I absolutely have to go to bed.
Nah,
we'll save
no
that
worries,
for another
Dawn.
episode.
Yeah, we'll get you on the third
Okay.
one. That one. Well, hey, Dawn, thanks for coming on. Where can people find you outside the cave?
Oh, well, thanks for having me. It's always a joy to be in the cave. I've been in weirder places, if you can believe it. You can find me. I'm Dawn Brody. It's Dawn, Brodey. Oh, look, there it is. And the podcast is called HILF, History I'd Like to Fuck. And it is well-researched history by a bona fide historian with a comedy eye. And I love it. And it'd be a joy if you listen.
Hell yeah. Check that podcast out. Check out Sunday Night Secret Society. If you're watching live, check out the comments for the Discord link. If you're watching this later, you can find that on our website, cave.com. That's cave4v3.com. Shit, let's get out of here. Peace out.
Thanks, guys.
Peace out, guys. You know, Kyle, when you were like, history repeats itself, I hope it doesn't repeat itself where we have to suck each other's dicks, because I do not want to be in that world.
Hey, hey, hey.